All right, hello, good morning, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. My name is Katie Lane, and I'm a product marketing manager here at Meraki. And today we're going to be going over enabling retail innovation at Tommy Bahama with cloud networking. And so because of that, we have a very special guest, Stewart Hubbard, joining us from Tommy Bahama to talk specifically about his network deployment. Stuart, would you like to say hello?
Hi, everybody.
Thanks. So great. I guess I'm going to first jump into the agenda here really quickly. And actually I have one question to ask of our viewers. I have a quick one-question poll. The question is, how did you first hear about Meraki? So if you just answer that for me, and then we'll jump right into our content here. Great. I see almost all of you have voted. I'll give you one more second here to get those last selections in. All right, perfect. Thanks so much for that feedback. All right, so let's go over the agenda for today. First, I'm going to go over a brief introduction to Meraki for those of you who are less familiar. And then I'm going to take a second to talk about why cloud networking and a little bit of the background architecture that Meraki uses to support our cloud-based dashboard and our cloud-based networking products. Next, we'll jump into the case study, talking with Stuart about his network deployment at Tommy Bahama around the world. And finally, we'll actually jump into a live demo. I'll do a little background demo for, again, those people who are less familiar with Meraki. I'll show a few features on our live Meraki Corp network, and then we'll get a snapshot of also the Tommy Bahama network and give you all a chance to ask Stuart some questions about how he's deployed the Meraki products, what methodology he's using, and so forth. And then a brief overview of the Meraki product line, and then some more time for Q&A at the end of the session. So additionally, I also have two of my colleagues here with me, Chris and Olivia, and they're going to be taking your questions live. So don't keep all your questions until the end of the session. If you go ahead and give me your questions, we can answer them throughout the session, and it'll flow a little better that way. All right, so also some exciting news. We're going to be giving out a free access point to the qualified IT professionals on the line. This is an 802.11n access point, and it comes with a 3-year cloud management license to the Meraki dashboard that we're going to be showing you today. So all that we ask for you to do in order to receive this access point is to call us and confirm your shipping information. So you should be able to find the contact for your Cisco Meraki representative in the reminder email you received before today's webinar. All right, with all of that covered, I'll just give a brief background here of Cisco Meraki. So Meraki is the leader in cloud networking. We have thousands of customer networks deployed in hundreds of different countries around the world. Meraki was actually founded out of a research project from MIT, and our founders were working on this project called RoofNet, actually, if you're interested in some of the history there. And this project was aimed at blanketing all of Cambridge, Massachusetts with Wi-Fi. So while they were developing this technology, they ended up developing some really cool RF technologies, spectrum analysis technologies, but also neat management tools in order to manage this very distributed network that spanned all of Cambridge. So since then, they decided they were onto something, came out to California and started Meraki about 7 years or so ago. And they've expanded from the initial wireless and management technology to now encompass switching, security, WAN optimization, as well as mobile device management. So we'll cover a few of these products today. And back in November of 2012, Meraki was acquired by Cisco, and we're going to be forming the cloud networking group within Cisco. So some pretty exciting things coming down the line. Our strategy within Cisco is really to continue to increase that investment in R&D where we came from our roots in research, and also to use Cisco's reach to bring Meraki to new markets and also new product lines. So we have some exciting stuff coming out as well. So Meraki's been recognized for innovation in a number of places. A couple of them are listed here. InfoWorld's Technology of the Year Award. We've been recognized as a visionary in Gartner's Magic Quadrant for wired as well as wireless LAN. But really more than that, we're trusted day in and day out by thousands of customers around the world. And some of them are listed here, as well as some specific retail customers. Tommy Bahama listed here as well, which we'll be focusing on today. So now let's take a second to talk a little bit about why cloud networking. So the cloud is not a new idea to any of us, especially those of us in IT, but maybe the combination of cloud and networking might be. So I wanted to take a second and talk about maybe why this is a benefit to networking and how the cloud helps us increase that efficiency of IT. So I wanted to talk about a couple benefits here that really hold true when you apply cloud to any industry, and they definitely hold true when you bring cloud into networking. So manageability, scalability, as well as cost savings. Manageability is a pretty simple one to think about. Meraki is very centralized management. We are managing all of our products from the cloud, and it really makes troubleshooting and actually the day-to-day use of your network a completely different world when using the Meraki dashboard. Scalability is also greatly improved with a cloud-based solution. We can scale way, way up or way, way down. So you get the same type of features and functionality if you deploy 5 access points or if you deploy 5,000, because you don't have to have a back-end infrastructure built out in order to support all of these cool features that we're offering. And finally, cost savings. Cost savings kind of comes into play when you increase that manageability and improve scalability. It's just improving the efficiency of IT, reducing those operational costs. So this is the complete Meraki portfolio here. On the left are MR wireless LAN access points. Moving down to the right are MX security appliances. We also have MS Ethernet switches. These are our access layer switches. And finally, on the far right are Cisco Meraki Systems Manager. This is our mobile device management platform, 100% free, a very cool management product. It's actually the only one that's not a piece of hardware. This is completely in the cloud. And all of these products are managed centrally from our web-based dashboard, which is what we'll be using today to demo all of these products and to look at Stewart's Tommy Bahama network. Okay, so I wanted to take a brief second to talk a little bit about the cloud networking architecture from the back end, how this works when a device does connect to the cloud, what's happening there. Because these are actual hardware devices on your premises, but they're talking to the cloud in order to receive that configuration data. So when the devices are talking to the cloud, they actually contain a local configuration as well as the configuration that's hosted in the cloud. So you would make a change in the cloud, that configuration gets pushed out to your devices. And as you can see, and you will see in our demonstrations, we're able to get some really great data up in the cloud just from some management data that's passed from your hardware devices up to our cloud to be aggregated and put into cool graphs for you to understand and get very deep visibility into their networks. And so this management data is actually not sending any of your actual traffic up through the cloud. So it allows us to be completely secure, HIPAA and PCI compliant, because we're not actually sending data to the cloud. It's just that management information. So anytime you're sending data, it's going to actually stay locally on your LAN or go directly to its destination somewhere else on the internet. This type of architecture also allows us to be completely scalable. Because we're not actually sending all this data through the cloud, we don't have a bottleneck there. So we're able to scale to thousands of devices in minutes. This is also very reliable. All of our data centers are backed up. We have multiple data centers around the world. And there's a hot backup for each one. And then also a tertiary backup as well. So we have a 99.99% uptime SLA for the connection to the data centers. and I think I've covered these ones at the bottom, definitely secure, HIPAA, PCI compliant that we'll talk about today as well. And our data centers undergo third-party security audits and daily penetration tests to ensure that they are up to snuff. All right, and I like this slide just because it shows one of the cool things, the unique things that we're able to offer our customers because we are in the cloud. And these are our software as a service feature deliveries. We actually send quarterly updates with new features out to all of our existing customers. And the ones listed here are just some examples of things we've been able to push out to our existing customers and be able to utilize on their network, the existing network hardware. So this is kind of cool, kind of unique to Meraki and to the cloud. All right, so now we're going to jump in and talk to Stuart about Tommy Bahama and how he has deployed Meraki and what his experiences have been. So Stuart, would you like to introduce yourself and how what you're working on at Tommy Bahama, what your position encompasses?
Sure, thank you. I'm the Vice President of IT for Tommy Bahama, so I have responsibility for all the technology, infrastructure, our service desk, IT operations, development, so pretty much anything that plugs in and all the infrastructure is my responsibility.
Very cool.
Like it says here, I've been in retail for about 10 years. I came to Tommy Bahama a year ago from Coldwater Creek, another retailer, and have been for the past year, building the team here at Tommy Bahama, rebuilding a lot of the technology and doing what's necessary to support the growth of this company. That Tommy Bahama has been growing at a fairly steady pace for a number of years, and we're expanding not only in the U.S. but internationally. So that's been my focus over the past year is building out an IT capability that can support the growth of the company.
Absolutely. You guys have been busy as well. You already covered some of this, but can you talk a little about the initiatives you've had in the last year and your IT team, how you guys work?
Sure. Well, a lot of what we do is supporting the opening of new locations, whether that's a retail store or, in some cases we have, work that's done on corporate locations. I've got about 35 people, a few network engineers. We're pretty thin for the size of the organization, and like it says here, currently we have deployed Cisco Meraki, and I think we'll go into some of the detail about how I landed on the Meraki solution.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so let's go into that a little more. So you had some initiatives for guest Wi-Fi at your restaurants and some other initiatives. Can you tell us about?
We have Tommy Bahama, in addition to the 120 or so retail and outlet locations, we have 14 restaurants. And at these restaurant locations, even prior to me arriving at Tommy Bahama last year, we had guest wireless capability. A lot of restaurants and coffee shops do this. It's a sort of a perk that you offer people in your location. So we had a guest wireless capability, but it was done with consumer-grade routers. Manageability was a bit of an issue when there was a need to change a password, or in some cases the SSIDs needed to be changed or weren't consistent. It was different per site, and obviously if there was a hardware failure or something, in a lot of cases we would find out about it from the restaurant manager rather than having any kind of proactive knowledge of that. So my first deployment of Meraki was in conjunction with the opening of a flagship restaurant in Manhattan in December of last year. I decided out of the gate we would put in Meraki APs. It's a fairly large location, multiple levels There's a bar downstairs and a restaurant upstairs, and we had to cover a lot of square footage, so I knew we would need multiple APs, and I didn't want to duplicate what we've been doing. So we selected Meraki as kind of a pilot location for the guest wireless in this location, and that went off successfully, and it's been very reliable, very good solution. So we, on the heels of that, very quickly expanded that to the remainder of the restaurant locations for our guest wireless, and at that point had a single pane of glass for the monitoring and management of all the guest-facing wireless at all of our restaurant locations, and that's still in place today.
Very cool. Some really cool background there. In your Manhattan store, I'm curious, about how many APs did you end up deploying in that location? You said it was pretty big. Can you tell us about how many?
I believe there are 6 at that location.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many customers do you think those are serving on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, 300 to 400. We do a pretty good lunch rush there, so just based on, the connectivity that we see, the people connecting to the network.
Yeah.
That's about what we see.
A lot of people on their iPhones.
A lot of iPhones, a lot of Android. Yeah.
Yes. Great. So let's talk about, you also had another initiative in your store, your retail locations. Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Sure,
well?
Sure. Yeah. So obviously as a retailer, there's a lot of interest these days in enabling mobile capabilities in the store, whether that's mobile point of sale, assisted selling, other things that you can do on mobile devices like iPads. So there was conversations taking place right off the bat when I got here about when are we going to deploy wireless capability to the stores, because my retail partners obviously want all of those things to help their business. So we've been talking about it. There was actually a project underway to investigate different platforms. The engineering team here had talked to Cisco. They talked to Aruba. And when I came on board, I obviously had some experience with Meraki, and had encouraged them to add that to the mix of the people we were talking to. Frankly, we didn't have the resources, given a lot of the other initiatives that I have here, to rebuild a lot of core infrastructure. So it wasn't a priority, and it wasn't until December that I got a call from one of the executives from the retail division saying, hey, we just came out of a meeting, and one of our initiatives to acquire customers relies on a sweepstakes that we're going to run in the first quarter of next year. And that sweepstakes, one of the ideas we have is we're going to do it with mobile devices in store, and if you go into the store and sign up as opposed to going onto the web, you're going to be eligible for bigger prizes. You're going to have a better chance of winning and all that. So we needed to have that, but it was all dependent on getting a mobile device in the store. So he tells me this, I think it was on December 12th, and he says the sweepstakes is going to launch February 1st. So do you think you can pull this off?
Wow.
So I said, hell no, I don't think so. But I'll give it a shot. I mean, we'll see what we can do. I'll get, if we could prioritize locations, I will, make sure that we get as many done by then as we can. So at that point, started talking to vendors, about capabilities. Did they have things in stock? Pricing was obviously a big concern. Given a short time frame, you want to make sure that you're not paying too much. So, and I was still at this time talking to Aruba, I was talking to Meraki, and ended up with a proposal that looked pretty good for Meraki. At that point, it was a matter of deployment and how we were going to get these things out there. So interviewed several companies that had some experience, third-party providers that had some experience doing nationwide deployments, some with Meraki, some with other solutions, and actually found a vendor that was willing to take on the challenge to try to get this stuff done on a short time frame. And we signed the contract right around the last week of December, and the APs began shipping in early January. And so we had obviously settled on a Meraki solution at that point.
Very cool.
It was the initial schedule had the deployment pushing out into early March, and I applied pressure with through multiple channels to try to get that expedited, and lo and behold, they came back with a schedule and had proposed finishing by the end of January. So we pushed for that. The APs got on site with the vendor that we used in their warehouse around the second week in January. We started the nationwide deployment. We were doing 10, 12 stores a day for 2 weeks, and we actually deployed all the APs with the exception of Hawaii within the last few days of January, and then the Hawaii stores actually went on January 31st. We shipped iPads right around the same time. iPads arrived on February 1st. We turned up the promotion, and it went off seamlessly. I think we might have had 1 or 2 DOA iPads, but in terms of the wireless deployment and having these things done in time to support the sweepstakes, it was a rousing success, and my retail partners were extremely happy.
Very cool. That is a really impressive deployment.
Yeah,
cool.
I was actually shocked that we pulled it off. But
yeah, that's a cool story. So you ended up with, let's see, I think I skipped over one slide, but let's talk about your network configuration that you ended up with after that.
Sure.
Yeah,
we still have the guest Wi-Fi, like it says here. We did, we did a click-through splash with all the associated liability, things that you want to put out there. We are blocking certain types of traffic. We do have dedicated internet connections for guest Wi-Fi. There is no crossover with any of the in-store systems. But we still don't want, we want to be prudent with bandwidth and respectful of, all the guests that are in the restaurants, and not have somebody hogging up bandwidth or doing anything illegal. So we are using traffic shaping, and we are blocking, pornography and other things that are, not appropriate.
Very cool.
We also, we are leveraging the air marshal capability as well, and we, review that, and we'll quarantine anything, suspicious that we find out there. On the retail side, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail just for security reasons, but there's multiple layers of security. But the wireless access today, because we're not really doing any mobile point of sale or any other things that require access to the cardholder data environment in the store, that is completely segmented today. So the iPads supporting promotions and everything just go to the internet. They can't get anywhere else. And that's, just where we are today. Obviously it sets us up nicely for looking at more mobile capabilities in the store. And we're talking to several vendors about, software platforms that are going to enable that kind of functionality.
Very cool. That's cool. Yeah, that's nice that you have that kind of pre-set up. It's good planning there. Great. So, and then we talked about how your access points are configured. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you're using mobile device management to manage all of the iPads? I think you have 150 iPads now floating around somewhere.
Yeah. And I can't say, I can't claim, that I was really prescient with this. I think I just kind of got lucky in that, the particular promotion aligned and the business need aligned with the capabilities that the Meraki solution had. So, as we're talking about deploying these iPads and, I had done some really basic testing, and my team here had done some pretty basic testing with MDM functionality. Tommy Bahama doesn't really have a formal MDM solution. We use good technology for email on our mobile devices, but as far as true MDM, we really weren't doing anything. So, looking at deploying a large number of mobile devices out there, you obviously want the ability to manage them. If they're lost or stolen, which can happen, you want to be able to wipe that data. Even in this case, there's nothing really on the device that's a concern. You still want to have that capability. There are changes. We run different programs and promotions over time. Those change on a quarterly basis or whatever. And you want to be able to modify the applications on that device without having to ship them around or do anything manual. So we did some testing here. We had an access point that we put at the headquarters location where we are, and we were running through a proof of concept with the iPads, and it worked really well. Basically, you're just applying an iOS profile, using the same interface that you're using to manage the APs, and so it's a single pane of glass for this particular use case. And we got to the point where we could restrict the iPads, lock them down to only the sweepstakes and some other just basic functionality without having to worry about employees installing other applications, consuming bandwidth, or doing things they weren't supposed to be doing. So we got that profile finalized and deployed that along with the iPads. And today, and you'll see here in a moment, we're managing those, and we can see those alongside all of the APs that they're connected to out in the stores.
Very cool. Yeah, dashboard makes it nice. You can kind of tie those two together. So network results, I mean, it seems like you've had a really quick deployment. Everything has gone pretty smoothly. Anything you've learned or come up post-deployment that's been a nice surprise, or any way you are using the network now that you maybe didn't expect to at the beginning?
Yeah, there's a few things. I think, obviously I sort of stumbled into this solution here that's turned out to work pretty well. One of the things that I was pleased with, we because of the short fuse on this, we had to make some educated guesses about the number of APs we'd need, given the square footage of our stores and things. We were fairly conservative in the number of APs that we purchased, so we could, make sure we had enough to cover the stores. And one of the things that's been kind of nice is we've discovered in some locations that these APs are putting out a signal that we required on the whole, fewer than we thought. So I ended up with a surplus of APs, and we ended up taking those and actually replaced all the Cisco APs in our headquarters location, about 26 of them, with Meraki APs, and that's provided some other capabilities. I think we also have done our distribution center, one of the other corporate locations here outside of Seattle, with Meraki. So the coverage that you get with these devices is pretty good compared to what we're used to with some older Cisco APs that we had in place.
Very cool.
Obviously, the visibility, the management with a thin engineering staff, the ability to manage these and not have to deal with iOS upgrades and things like that is really really nice. I can go in, I'm read-only, so I don't do any damage, but I can go in and look at, the health of the network, and it's kind of a, because these APs are connected, out in the stores, I can see at a glance whether I have a network issue, out to a store. And this graphical thing you see here, it's not red today. I think when the snapshot was taken, it looks like we might have had one or two issues out there, but it's nice to have that visibility. And from a hardware reliability standpoint, we deployed these in January. I think I may have had one AP that's had a hardware issue and since then. So the hardware reliability has been really good. I don't see any issues that we're going to have to deal with, replacement over time. At least not yet. So I've been pleased with that.
That's great. And there's a lifetime warranty, so you're all set. A question came in for you while we were talking. The question is, did you set up one network for all the stores or individual networks for each stores? I know we'll talk about this in just a second, but
yeah,
did you end up setting up?
Yeah. It's one network, so you can, it's seamless. If you were to take an iPad from one location to another, it would work there.
Very cool.
We are doing, again, I don't want to get too deep into security, but we are doing some things with MAC addresses and whatnot that prevent unauthorized devices from connecting to the network.
Okay. That's good to note. Perfect. So we already kind of touched on this, future plans you're deploying to more stores. You even have a couple networks with the full Meraki stack.
Yeah. So just since that store deployment, obviously on the heels of that success, we took a deeper look at Meraki and some of the things out there. We had a restaurant open in Tokyo in March, and we basically duplicated the solution we had in Manhattan at that location for the guest wireless access that we offer there. And so if you look at our map, you can see there's over in Tokyo, there's a green dot over there that represents that network. In April of this year, I was told that we were acquiring the Canadian business from a franchisee, and I had 9 stores that I needed to bring over to our network by May the 5th. So on a very short timeline, I had to figure out how to get these stores who were on DSL connections connected to our network and using our point-of-sale system. So we looked at Meraki. We had been testing the MX device as a potential for moving some of our stores to broadband. And in this case, given the short lead time, I didn't have time to provision dedicated circuits. So decided to keep the DSL connections that existed in the Canadian stores. We purchased the MX60 devices for the store locations. We're also using the MS22 switches, and went out the weekend of May the 5th, replaced the consumer-grade routers they had out there with the Meraki MX60. We have a MX80 head-end in Seattle, and we connected those stores over the Meraki VPN back to headquarters, and those stores have now been up and running for a couple of months, and we're on, well, it's been about a month and a half, but they're on Meraki MX60 VPN connection back to Seattle, and that worked extremely well. We have full visibility down to the port level on both the switch and the MX60, and it's working really well. So we're now considering this for the U.S. stores. We're looking at whether or not this might be something we would deploy and replace a legacy frame relay network.
Very neat. That's great. I got one more question while you're talking again. The question is, do you plan on bringing wireless to warehouses or distribution centers? You may already have it.
Yeah, we do. They do have wireless today. Our DC currently is using, one of those legacy Motorola systems, and there's some issues with device support. If we were to replace those, so it's not on our short-term radar. We did this. The APs we put down at the distribution center were more for the knowledge workers there, as opposed to anything out on the floor. So the RF scanners and things like that are still using the Motorola network.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks, Stuart. Perfect. So I think actually at this time I'm going to go ahead and jump into the demo. And so first I want to show our Meraki Corp network and just drill into a couple things, and then we'll look at an overview of the Tommy Bahama network. So what I'm looking at right now is actually our live Meraki Corp network. A lot of red going on because we do have a lot of test networks in this organization. But as you can see, this is a complete overview of all of our networks. We have a couple offices in London and in Europe, and from here we can drill into each one of these networks or search, for instance, on the right-hand side. Whoops, I guess I've been logged out. Log back in. Perfect. So I can search for any location, and from here jump into that particular network, London, for instance. I've already logged in to our headquarters in San Francisco, and let me actually go ahead and find that one. Here's our Meraki Corp network, about 1,000 clients. We can see kind of a snapshot here, 3.2 terabyte usage. From here I can jump into this network and we can start drilling down into some of the features we've been talking about. So I wanted to just start by just giving a brief overview of wireless, and I know Stuart mentioned a couple other products, the switch and the security appliance, and if we have time I'll jump into any of those if you guys have questions. But from the wireless portion I can very easily get an overview of what's happening in our wireless network. I can view this on a map or on these floor plans that we have imported. And from here I can check out what's happening with each one of the access points in our building here. And these numbers on top are showing how many clients have connected in the last day. And you can see they're all green. If they were red or yellow, I'd know there was a problem, or gray means completely offline, and I'd know I'd need to diagnose something there immediately. And that's what Stuart was talking about. You can get notifications if these access points go down so that you know about it before your clients or customers do. So from here I can jump into any one of these access points and get a snapshot of what's going on with that specific access point, MAC address, serial number, what SSIDs are enabled, LAN IP addresses, the channels. My 2.4 gigahertz I can see I'm on channel 11, and on my 5 gigahertz I'm on channel 157. I can also see my switch information upstream. So this is pretty cool. This does integrate with our other products. So I can see here that I'm on port 28 of this particular switch. So if I wanted to, I could click this link and it would actually bring me over here left to the switch status page. And from here I can zoom in to port 28 here. And I can see that I'm pulling 7 watts of PoE from the advertised 12 watts and exactly what's going on this specific port level. So a lot of visibility, a very different troubleshooting experience because of the way you're able to move around from device and instantly get that snapshot of what's going on. So I've moved back here to the access point once again, and each time you're on a page that you're looking at any Meraki hardware, you get this complete set of live tools here on the left. And this is showing you exactly what's going on with that device. We're looking at the access point, so we're able to see some specific live tools for APs, such as the current clients that are connected, channel utilization, here I can see exactly what's happening on my 2.4 and 5 gigahertz channels, what's happening with my 802.11 traffic, and also see my non-802.11 interference. So some really cool features. And all of our access points do actually talk to each other. So you can see here I can identify all of my mesh neighbors. These are all the access points nearby, and I can see which ones are closest to this particular access point. So all of the Meraki access points do have we call it auto RF functionality. And that means they're going to talk to each other and pick the best channel for that access point based on which access points are nearby in those channels. And it's also going to slightly tune that power as well if you do have a high density situation. And if you do have a failure upstream, maybe a bad cable or something that's connecting that access point to the switch, these access points automatically heal. So an access point would automatically form a mesh connection with one of its mesh neighbors. It would flip over to the same channel of its neighbor and continue passing traffic through that other access point, so you wouldn't have a hole in your wireless coverage. So some really cool wireless features here. I'm not going to dive into all of them at this time, but I do want to take a second to look at this clients page, because this is something Meraki does pretty differently from some other vendors. We do what we call client fingerprinting, and that means that we're actually able to identify information about the clients that are connecting to our network. So this is great for environments where you have a lot of unknown devices connecting. We can build out a profile about each device that's connecting. So you can see here we have actually only one client currently connected to this access point. And from here I can click into this client and find out what this access point has learned just by watching the traffic that's flowing over the network. So you can see here I've learned the host name for this device based on an 802.1x login. But we've also picked up information from other types of traffic like DHCP requests and web browser user agents. So I know the device type, it's an Intel Windows 7 device. It has 802.11 capabilities on 2.4 and 5 gigahertz channels, and get an overview of what this device is doing. But beyond that, I'm also able to see all of the applications that this device is actually using. So on the right here, I can pull out the applications and view actually specific websites that this person has been using. You'll see a couple are grayed out. That's not because they're bad websites, it's because I'm not the administrator of this account, so I'm not able to see everything. But we can also see the types of traffic. So you can see here on the left, Google, TCP, Google Docs, YouTube, a lot of YouTube happening here. So it's very easy to get that deep visibility into what's happening on your network. And from here, we can also go ahead and make traffic shaping decisions based on what we've learned about the traffic. So this is great that we can understand this about this one particular client, but we can also do the same thing for every single client that's connecting to our network. So if I expand out once again this application pie chart, I can find out all about the different types of applications that are being used on the network and jump into any one of them from here, iTunes for instance, and learn about all of the top clients contributing to the iTunes rule, who is using the most iTunes on my network. And then from there I can make any kind of traffic shaping or firewall decision based on what type of traffic is actually going across the network. So we can do this from all of our wireless access points. We can also do this from a switch port level, which is pretty unique to a switch, as well as from our security appliance. So every single one of the Meraki hardware appliances, hardware devices, actually has this capability to give you that deep visibility into your network. So just wanted to give you a brief overview there. I want to take a second to actually look at Stuart's network and see how he has it set up. So I had previously logged in and pulled up actually the Tommy Bahama dashboard. And we're looking right now at the complete network overview. So as Stuart mentioned, there's the green dot over in Japan now. Stuart, do you want to tell us anything about how you've organized your networks here?
Yeah, sure. Well, just based on a recommendation, we worked pretty closely with one of the engineers at Meraki when we launched this effort, just to make sure that we did it in such a way that the manageability would be efficient. So we do have each location broken out, and the networks, are sort of treated separately. So you can manage a location, manage the hardware at the location separate from the networks that are available there. So we have an overlay of the SSID, the wireless networks, as I mentioned, are consistent across all the locations. However, I can manage them independently, and I can see them, on a per location basis. You see a couple of the Canadian stores there on the right, and you see the devices are listed separately there. So you can obviously drill down and see in some of these locations in Florida, for example, there's 30, 40 locations there. There's lots of locations represented at a high level, and you kind of drill down and see how things are configured, or whether it's online or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And so these are obviously a combination of stores and restaurants, right?
Yeah, there's a few restaurants there in Florida.
Okay. And in your stores, you generally have one or more access points. What kind of density are you normally
typically,
seeing?
it's two. Most are two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. And then I also wanted to briefly show Systems Manager. Actually, here.
Yeah, so this is these are where the iPads are managed. These are the iPad clients.
Exactly.
So if you get a client there, you could see a list. But we tried to use a standard naming convention. So you see the iPads. We have store numbers, so those iPads all have. They correlate the number there correlates with the store number, so it's pretty easy for us to identify the location based on the name of that device. But then we also have populated based on what network they connect to. It populates the address information.
Right.
So we can pretty quickly determine whether or not we've got somebody in retail who has taken it upon themselves to move the device around. We don't like that.
Yeah.
So we try to keep tabs on that.
Perfect. Yeah, you can keep them all in check easily from here.
Yeah.
All right, great. So I'm actually going to jump back into a Meraki network because I don't want to show too much of the Tommy Bahama network here, and just show how we have configured our different SSIDs, and maybe Stuart can interject how he has configured his guest network, or if it's the same way. So if I go to wireless and then access control, from here I can set up everything security related, splash page related for any particular SSID. So on our Meraki network, I can go to our Meraki guest network, for instance, and we have ours configured with open association requirements. We have a splash page that uses actually Facebook login in order to have users log in through Facebook. And then if I go to the bottom here, we have these IP or addressing and traffic settings here. So our client IP assignment is actually we're using the Meraki DHCP through NAT mode. So that means that our access point is actually handing out those IP addresses as opposed to actually letting it get on the local LAN or be part of the LAN in bridge mode. So this would be the option that you might want to use if you were having a corporate network or allowing users to access some of your local resources. So do you use NAT mode in your guest access points, Stuart?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then, from here we can also make some traffic shaping and firewall settings or decisions. So if I go to wireless and then firewall and traffic shaping, I'm still on Meraki guest. So from here it's, let me see. Now I'm on Meraki guest. So I can really easily make a layer 3 firewall rule to drop all traffic that's destined for the local LAN. So any class A, B, or C IP addresses, it's going to get dropped right at the access point level. So from here, I can either choose to allow or deny that traffic. And I'm getting a question on the line, how do you set up 2 or more SSIDs? So sure, I'll go ahead and show you that really quickly. If you go to wireless and then SSIDs, from here, any network can have up to 15 different SSIDs. So we have multiple SSIDs configured on our Meraki network. A lot of them are unconfigured, as you can see here. So I'm going to show only the first 4. So from here, I can enable or disable different SSIDs and just rename it to whatever I would like to rename it. And then all of these settings on the bottom are actually populated based on how you configure the access control in the previous page I was on. So this is giving you a snapshot of how each of those networks is configured. And from here, I can jump into access control to actually make changes on a particular SSID. So on the top, I can just select which SSID I'd like to configure. Okay, I'm getting a question about the switches. So we did talk briefly about the switches, and I'll go back into that for our people on the line here. If I go to monitor and switch, this will look similar to the page we were looking at for the access points and clients, but now it's listing every single switch in our Meraki Corp network. So we have 45 here. And from here, I can once again jump into a particular switch and get that overview of what's going on that switch. You can see that this is a PoE switch. The P's on the port here are denoting that. And so from here, I can actually click on a particular port and get information of what's going on exactly on that particular port.
Yeah, I can just interject here. I mean, when we deployed those Canadian sites, we were using a third party who was up there, basically installing point of sale and doing everything. And I had engineers here who were watching, these dashboards as those things were being installed, and we could tell if the tech was plugging things into the right port or not immediately. So we've got, obviously we're segmenting certain things. We have VLANs, out of the stores, and very quickly, when the tech would plug something into the wrong place, we could say, hey, that device goes somewhere else. You need to plug that into 16 instead of 17. So it's really nice to have this kind of interface with that activity.
Very cool. Yeah, I love that use case, and we find people use it a lot. I mean, that helps you, for instance, because you don't have to actually go to that destination, so that's nice. Let's see. I'm getting one other question about, can you set a static IP on an access point? You absolutely can, and you can set static information on all of the Meraki devices and default routes and whatnot. And you actually, if you're wanting to do that, how you would do that is you actually connect directly to that device, and then you can go to a local configuration page. It's actually the only page that's not through dashboard. And from there, you can set up any static information in order to help that device gain access out to the cloud. See, I want to show quickly how you might configure a switch port. Let's see, configure. Let's see, switch ports. So something that's kind of unique about Meraki switches is we actually list out every single switch port together, and from here you can search if you want to narrow it down to any particular switch. So from here I can say pick a particular switch, IT desk 20, I think was the name of one, maybe not. Oh, here we go. IT desk 24. And from here it would pull up all of those switches, or by port. It might have been loading as well. Maybe I wanted to make a change to every switch, because you see here on the right, I'm actually looking at 2000 312 different switch ports. Maybe I wanted to make a change from every port 1 through 10. So it pulls up all of those switch ports. Oh, I see. On the port is the slash. I'm sorry. And so from here, I can select any number of ports and actually make a change to a group of ports all at the same time, regardless of which switch they're on. I know these are on the same switch, but from here I'd be able to enable or disable the port, turn on or disable rapid spanning tree, enable or disable PoE, set the link speed or negotiation, and also switch it to a trunk or access port. And also really great, you can set the access policy, and also access policy being 802.1x or radius credentials, and also VLAN information. So you can see here these switches are on multiple VLANs right now, but if I wanted to set everyone to native VLAN 1, voice VLAN 20 for instance, I could do that to many ports all at the same time right from this location. So I see we actually only have 3 minutes left. I realize I have a couple other slides to cover, just an overview of the Meraki product line. So I want to jump back here. We've talked a lot about the different products. We've actually talked about many different products. The wireless LAN products have been a focus. We have 5 different models, indoor and outdoor, 802.11n, and as I mentioned, lifetime warranty. These all operate or can operate over 802.3af PoE. And once again, a full suite of features. We've only touched on a few of them, but very rich feature set on our wireless LAN products. We've also briefly touched on our our access switches, this is the wrong page, our MX security appliances. We have 6 different models based on what throughput you're requiring for that particular site. And as Stuart mentioned, really great site-to-site VPN. A lot of retail customers of ours utilize this in order to very simply set up a VPN between all of their sites, and you can select split tunnel so that only the corporate traffic is actually going back to the to the headquarters site. And it's configured in about 2 clicks. Is that right, Stuart? Pretty quick to set up a VPN.
Pretty quick to set up, yeah.
And once again, layer 7 traffic shaping, content filtering, WAN optimization. I would say this is kind of like a UTM box. It does a whole lot all in one. And then our cloud managed access switches, which we've just gone over, they come in PoE and non-PoE. And wrapping up, these things are true for all of our products, are zero-touch provisioning, seamless firmware upgrades, as Stuart mentioned, really easy to push out new firmware to these devices, and all the user needs to do is actually schedule a time for that firmware upgrade to happen, and it happens. It'll actually pull up the new config, confirm that it's actually good, and then at that point switch over. So it's a pretty fail-proof process. And then PCI-compliant and 99.99% SLA uptime. So I think we've been answering questions throughout the session, so I think we're about out of time. I want to really thank Stuart for joining us. And for those of you on the phone, if you've seen a product that you like or think might be a fit in your organization, definitely let us know. We do free evals, free shipping both ways. A lot of our customers utilize this definitely to do pilot programs and make sure it's going to work for their environment. Thanks again for joining, and thanks, Stuart. Really appreciated having you on.
Oh,
all right.
my pleasure.